famed author Clive Cussler.
The hero Dirk Pitt.
Solar radiation, windmills, electric autos. And then, of course, there were the environmentalists. Quebec would force America to its knees. We have no choice but declare national bankruptcy.
Night Probe. Episode 1. Ik ben een Canadien.
Well, you're traveling next week. Is it for pleasure or for work?
Family stuff, so neither.
Well, I'm doing one of those, yes. Family. We're planning a trip to Washington, D.C., and we're going to stay at the Watergate.
Ooh.
It's a fancy hotel, but I got a great deal. And I was like, my husband was like, oh, that's so cool. It's the Watergate. It's got so much historical import. And I tell my daughter, she's like, the what? Is there like...
Wasn't that from a movie? I think there was a joke about that in Futurama.
She's like, no, but Baldur's Gate?
No relation.
Yeah. This book was crazy hard to find. I still haven't gotten my hard copy. I'm listening to the audiobook. There's no, not pirated, not dark web, digital copy of this book that I could find in my neck of the woods.
Dang.
I'm on the audiobook, and I realize how bad my hearing is. Occasionally I have to, not occasionally, every few minutes I have to go back and get like, what was that name? What was it Glee? Was it Flea?
Oh yeah, Foss Gly, or Foss Glee. Yeah, it's weird. The audiobooks are really muffled, and I think they do that to avoid copyright detection.
Whoa, diabolical. I wanted my, I was desperate because there's no written anything, but there's study guides for Night Probe. Did you see that?
No, I haven't found that.
I was like, well, who is studying this?
That was my first reaction. I mean, I feel it should be studied. There should be sociologists going over these books, trying to figure out what was going on, like what was happening in the water supply maybe back then.
I do feel that way about all media because it is a window into the soul of a society. But this was just amusing. And there's a study guide that you can buy on Kindle morning, noon, and night. There's 2 different versions. Somebody made 2 different versions of a study guide for Night Probe for Clive Cussler.
Wow, I have to track that down.
We have to get that person on the podcast. I will do that. I will try. If they're still alive. Or
if there's some sort of study guide, one of us has to get the study guide and the other person has to make a test.
I'll get the study guide and test you.
Now we'll see if you can get like an A+ in Night Probe.
I'm learning.
Which is something that nobody should aspire to.
I'll print out a certificate.
Sweet.
I saw a cartoon with my kid. Not a big deal. You're forced to watch these things, much as you are forced to travel with them. It was called The Bad Guys.
Oh.
Amazing cast. Sam Rockwell.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Mark Maron. But the most armed robberies in any cartoon I've ever seen for children. They rob a hard car multiple times.
Don't do these awesome crimes.
It was awesome. They looked so cool. This movie was the wrong message through and through.
Excellent. Now I have to track that down. It's probably on Netflix up here.
Did you see Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix?
We are 3 episodes into that.
The second episode you saw it.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was awesome.
It was really, foreshadowed. I mean, it wasn't a mystery of what was going to happen, but was that gruesome?
Yeah, not really. Yeah, no, it's Mike Flanagan, so I'm absolutely going to watch it at some point. We started watching it, and then we just got sidetracked, and now, instead of that, we watched Taskmaster New Zealand before bed. At some point, we'll have to go back to that.
I thought that was great. It's not quality television, but it's a mood and an ambiance. And the guy has such a great voice. The main...
Oh, yeah.
The billionaire guy.
I was wondering, what have I seen him in before? Because with a voice that awesome, I have to remember it.
It's beauty. Was he in anything? Because I've never seen him before in my life.
I don't know. I think I meant to look him up and I never got around to it.
Well, you probably have things to do, like work and
yeah,
keeping bridges up and making sure people don't die.
Bruce Greenwood. Boy, do I know that name. A highly regarded Canadian actor. Adam McGowan, Sweet Hereafter, 13 Days, J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. Oh, yeah, he was Christopher Pike in the Star Treks.
Oh, okay.
Gerald's Game, Double Jeopardy, iRobot, Capote, National Treasure, Dr. Sleep. He's in everything.
One of those guys who is in everything.
That's why I know that voice, yeah. He was one of the National Guardsmen who dies in the first Rambo movie, First Blood. That's like his second role ever.
Oh my god, he's been around a minute, huh?
He's from Canada. They filmed that in Hope, so I'm pretty sure every Canadian actor died in Rambo.
Have you seen the Amazon show Reacher?
No, but I know all about it.
And if you want to connect with your dad, ask him about Reacher, because he's probably watching Reacher.
It's so unbelievably dumb. Oh my god.
I've heard so much about it thanks to the Instagram and TikToks of Jason Pargin, who just constantly posts about Reacher.
So yes, and I got it because I saw his last tweet about like he reached for it, and then I saw the last episode. I'm like, oh my god, this is a pun. This is a complete circle of pun. The show is a pun. The dialogue is a pun. People commenting on it. It's just a pyramid of joy and cheesiness.
Reacher is about a man named Reacher who is extremely large.
As long as everybody has fun and knows exactly that they're making a stupid show, that's quality.
Oh yeah, so stupid, and there's so much murder in it. The good guys are murdering people very casually.
Oh no, our 6'8" bodybuilding hero is up against somebody with a knife. Whatever will he tell, he's dead.
Well, like, Reacher lives, and I love that he's shot so he looks enormous. I don't know how tall he is in real life, and I don't believe any press release because it's in their interest to make him bigger. So as far as I know, he's 5 feet tall, and they just shoot him really low. But and there's this trope of like anybody with a southern accent, or the big guy is a dumb jock, the southern accent guy is stupid, the blonde is dumb. There's all these tropes that we live with, and I'm like, okay, he's a giant. He's not a dumb jock. He's an actor. I'm like, oh, but he read the script and he did it out loud? Maybe. But hey, it's a role of a lifetime for him, so good for him.
Apparently the actor is 6'2", which means I'm 2 inches taller than he is. Although I feel he's still somewhat more imposing than I am.
He's
What with the muscles.
got enormous hands. Like it doesn't help that most actresses are pocket-sized. So he's playing across this woman who's probably like 5 foot nothing and very demure. So it looks like these huge hands. It looks like he's with a child because he's like caressing her face to go in for the kiss, and it's just like, oh, that's proportions don't look great there.
And even most male actors are like 5'10" and under.
Is she of age? Reacher, get back. Can you do the introduction today? I'm going to blow my nose.
Welcome to Cussler Hustlers, the only Clive Cussler podcast that starts off with a train wreck and a boat wreck.
But we'll follow it up with a plane crash.
Shit, we do. Yeah, that's like chapter 4. You're right. We are covering all the bases with this book, which is weird because I'm like 14, 15 chapters in, and it almost seems like nothing's happening, like they're just setting up all the pieces. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I am your co-host, Topper, and over there, my co-host, Nancy, has stopped blowing her nose.
Yes, I have. Hi, everyone. Good to see you, figuratively, podcast listeners.
All right, let me get comfortable as we dive into this nonsense.
Let us. This is Night Probe, Chapter 1. Oh, prologue. This is the first 3-part prologue I've ever seen.
Yeah, there was one point I wanted to make just before we start. Up to Chapter 11, which is where I was taking notes for this. By the end of Chapter 11, we have 17 named characters with dialogue and plot-relevant speaking parts.
Wow.
He's somehow making this one even more complicated. Like, he's putting even more pieces into play.
I see why so many of his books weren't put into movies, because that's expensive. That's a lot of cast.
Well, I'm sure they would eliminate most of the cast. Like, they would get rid of the boat sinking and just have the train. They wouldn't even have the whole, this is a stick-up nonsense. Like, they would eliminate as much as they could, like they did for Titanic. Like, half the cast was gone in the Titanic movie.
Boy, be prepared for a tangent at the stick-up part.
Okay, then.
But yeah, 3 prologue, which was interesting. It takes you right to the action. May 1914, upstate New York.
And the prologue is called Death Day.
Yes, the pulse of a beating nation, upstate New York, like near Schenectady. The Manhattan Limited train is heading towards death. It's Death Day, after all. But it's speeding towards a bridge that is going to be out, and the people on it are just wondering how others are doing. Some guy named Richard Essex, who will be very important later on, he's looking about and he's like, oh, this is a fancy train. There's like velvet everywhere, mahogany everywhere.
Richard Essex is in the library. He's looking at these ceramic tile floors, beveled mirrors, red velvet upholstery. God damn, that's a fancy train. Bring that back.
It's like Vincent Price just threw up everywhere. This train is great. It's gothic, it's dark, it probably smells like cigars.
The golden age of mass transit.
And golden age of mass transit, yes. That's a very cynical statement. Deeply cynical.
Mass transit when, only 8 people needed it.
Back when spittoons were acceptable? Gross practice. Holy cow. But on the train, they were brass, so it's high-end. And this guy, Richard, is a little, he can't sleep. So he asked the Pullman guy, what can you give me from the dining car to put me out? The waiter is like, how about some burgundy wine and some clam bouillon? If he said clam chowder, fine. Clam bouillon is what?
That just sounds like the worst tea imaginable.
Oh, it's all liquid dinner. What are you doing to your stomach?
Well, you're settling your stomach.
He's lucky the train crashed.
You don't want chunks. You want a nice, smooth... Oh, I've just killed Nancy.
Time that very well. Listeners, I almost had seltzer go right through my nose. But he's looking around and he's got some G-men with him on the train because he's got an important document to transport. He's an important government agent guy. And his G-men, he's like, wow, these guys, their per diem is like $75 per day. That's unheard of. In the early 2000s, I was on a per diem for $50 a day.
Huh.
By the government, by the U.S. government. So it went down from fictional 1914 per diem to 2002 per diem. I would have fantasized about $75 per diem.
You're getting ripped off.
Richard, or Mr. Essex, just cuddles up with his clam bouillon and burgundy wine because maybe he doesn't have teeth. He's wondering how his counterpart, Harry Shields, is doing. He must be having a great time. Bet he could sleep.
I didn't have that many notes written down for chapter 1. Just him, the train, the 5 army guys, and his thought that all this was for the protection of a scrap of paper.
Yes.
But then chapter 2 is a little more interesting, which starts with Harvey Shields being catapulted out of a nightmare, and he wakes up covered in blood and being squeezed by metal.
Yes. Harry Shields is on notes.
That's much cooler.
And also a luxurious form of transportation. There's mahogany bureaus. Mahogany plays a big part of the decor to make this all.
Well, that's how you know it's expensive. All that other wood is shitty. We need fancy wood.
My grandmother-in-law had mahogany paneling in Fort Worth, Texas.
Dang.
On the house. Like the siding that was painted white.
Well, yeah.
I was like, this was a forest.
I mean, I don't know how many videos I've seen of people when they're doing renovations, they pull up linoleum and find, inch-thick solid hardwood oak flooring underneath.
My grandmother, my aunt had that.
Yep, my wife's, either her aunt or her grandma. Years ago, back when we were dating, we tried to move to Alberta and, start a new life together. And while we were there looking for jobs, we basically paid for room and board by nonstop cleaning her house. Although we didn't, pull up the lino, there was definitely, where the lino in the kitchen went to the carpet in the living room, you could see the oak underneath it where they had just put down new flooring. Because this was like 100-year-old house that had been redone 4 or 5 times.
Oh, so those floors were going to be beautiful.
But when lino came out, everybody thought lino was the greatest stuff. I mean, we talked about this with Titanic. The Titanic had the lightest and greatest linoleum throughout.
Linoleum and celery all day long. Nothing but the best.
God, the celery soup.
Celery boats. Celery was the first greenery of the year. It was ridiculous to grow because it has no calories. It's all effort and no gain nutritionally. It's a terrible thing to grow strategically for a populace, but that was the height of luxury because it was
fancy.
Yeah. So this guy, Harry Shields, is in a ship on the St. Lawrence River, and apparently another ship just crashed into the side of it, and it's going poorly for him. He's not having a better time than Richard Essex, though they are racing towards the finish line of ultimate bad days.
Yeah, he wakes up to find his stateroom has been ripped open, and there's a dead woman he doesn't recognize in the debris. Because, the room above his came crashing down.
Yes. Things when they crash aren't neat.
Or he was in one and came crashing down. I'm not entirely sure. He's not where he should be.
Once he's written, he's got an amazing amount of prescience for somebody who's just been crushed while sleeping. He's coming to a lot more coherently than I would without those pressures. I could wake up naturally at 10 a.m. and be like utterly confused and in a panic in my own house.
I'm not sure a lot of people realize how wide the St. Lawrence Seaway is because they're 4 miles from the nearest shore. Like, it widens out basically into its own, well, it's a sea. It's not even a river at this point. So, I mean, it's May. It can't be that bad, but the water's ice cold. Everyone's drowning.
Yes, as we know, when a ship crashes into another ship, there's just like the mayhem and carnage of things crashing into things. He's pinned. His spine was likely shattered. He's going to be entombed as the ship sinks.
But the other passenger, who I think his daughter is the dead woman
Yes.
in this guy's mourning, he's panicking, and our Harvey Shields is like, you must take this travel case. It must reach the Foreign Office in London. It must. I don't care that your daughter just died. And the other guy's like, nah. And then the boilers explode.
Yes, but he does have profound clarity. He was like, oh, this is not going to work out. As he's trying to get the guy who's recently lost his daughter to see reason and save his own life, he realizes this isn't happening. I'm not getting through this guy. Clive does articulate this profound acceptance that comes before death of like,
Yeah, that was rough. The boat's sinking. He goes underwater and he just like inhales water. He's like, oh, well, I'm not gonna hold my breath. This is stupid.
He's like, let's go fast. And I'm kind of with him. He's pinned. His spine doesn't work. He's got the right idea. And part 3 of the prologue, so we're still in 1914 in May. I read this as Doleville. I didn't read this at all. I heard this as Doleville Hudson River Bridge, where the train station is.
I wrote down that it's the hottest May in 30 years, and our train agent, Sam Harding, says this is a night bred in hell, just to make this more dramatic.
Yes, there's a weather front coming in, and the temperature is going to drop 24 degrees all at once, which in New York does happen. You can have all of the weather in one day.
That happens up here. That's what we had about 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we've had summer days where it's beautiful, and then hailstorm, and then freak tornado. There was a tornado in the town that I live in now.
Ugh.
The 80s, well before I lived here, but it took at a pre-K class. So like this is a mountain area. It's well before tornadoes were thought to be so prevalent. And when you think of tornadoes, you think of Kansas or Iowa, flat plains.
Yeah, flat ground.
Sound of a freight train, Dorothy, the whole Wizard of Oz thing. But apparently tornadoes are everywhere. And this tornado took out a pre-K. Not the rest of the school, just the pre-K. How morbid.
Yeah, I'm laughing in horror.
That's all you can do. You're like, that's thrilling and just terrible.
That's very much God going, fuck this room in particular.
And yes, it was very much of that. And nobody really believed it was a tornado because that was impossible, as was known at the time to be impossible. So it just felt like God came down and took all the children from the village.
Yeah, because everyone knows you don't get those in the hills. You only get those on flat land. And it was a couple of years ago we had one. It was a fairly small one, but it still did a bit of damage up here in the Okanagan, which is like our huge warm valley where all the vineyards are. One touched down and was caught on like 100 different cell phones and fucked up a road and some houses and left. And people are like, what the hell's there a tornado doing up here? We're in a valley in the middle of the mountains.
Well, there was a few years ago, we had lived in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which is, an urban Brooklyn environment. We move out here, and then there's a tornado that hits Bay Ridge, and we're like, oh, that's the dentist office it's taking out. And it was the first footage of a tornado in Brooklyn ever. They're like, because it can't happen. It's only very recently we've accepted as a society weather can happen anywhere.
That can happen. And then just like it moving towards them, they're just like, there's no tornado, which I think sums up how climate change is being accepted right now.
There's a 100% chance that we're all going to die.
Well, the handsome astronomer can come back anytime, but the yelling lady, not so
much.
It's called negative panic. Yeah. I did that with the bear once. I was like, oh, that's a big cat. My brain just couldn't switch.
My wife was messing with me because Thursday, Friday, and some of Saturday, like it basically snowed nonstop. So we got about a foot of snow over about 48 hours. And I had just come back in from shoveling again because each snowfall is heavier than the last. And my wife shows me the Weather Network app and says, don't worry, it says it only snowed 2 millimeters. It's wrong. The weather app is very wrong.
The weather can be... I was listening to the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast. Great podcast. It's been around forever.
Woohoo.
And they were talking about, we don't get any snow this year. They're in the northeast of the U.S., so not far from me. I'm like, motherfuckers, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, our weather's been great. Like, you're not that far. How could you not know? The trees were javelins last week.
Nope. They were in the safe part, I guess.
I guess.
But they recorded that a couple of months ago.
The phenomenon, it's like rogue waves. Nobody believed in rogue waves until they got one on camera
Mhm.
in the 90s, which was shockingly recent. The late 1900s, as the kids call it.
Yeah, I'm guessing all the evidence they had, people just thought they must have been wrong. They saw something else.
Yeah, trauma.
They're crazy.
They had one guy who was interviewed because he was the lone survivor from a Coast Guard vessel. And it was a ship, a Coast Guard ship. It wasn't like a little yacht. It was a research vehicle or something, or just enormous. He was a lone survivor, and he had the videotapes somehow. That story I don't know. But they were just talking to him like, oh, it's survivor's guilt. It wasn't that big of a wave. And he was like,
fuck y'all.
No, it was. How did we get here? Anyway, big New York weather.
Night bred in hell, bad weather. Sam Harding is one of our train agents, and the radio operator, or I guess not the radio, the telegraph operator is playing chess by telegraph with the other station agents. When he gets a message that the Manhattan Limited is late, and then Meacham gets a message that a girder fell off a bridge and damaged a boat upstream. So like, oh no, the bridge is damaged. We should do something.
Yeah, well, they think the bridge is damaged. He's a little skeptical at first. He was like, I wouldn't know if the bridge has always been there.
It's just one girder fell off, yeah.
It's like saying, is your nose still there? Of course it is. He doesn't believe his supervisor calling him from Albany. So he goes, he's like, oh, I have to go kick open the door and inspect the bridge and wave the lights to stop the train. Hold the train until we can inspect the bridge. And then that same moment, as he's about to step outside, an effeminate mobster the size of a jockey comes into the train station.
Yeah, there's a lot of description here for what is a really... I mean, it's important in the grand scheme of the plot, I guess, but it's a really unimportant part of everything that happens.
This guy gets so much detail. He's wearing spectator shoes. He's wearing two-tone shoes.
I hope he somehow comes back later in the book, like he's like some French-Canadian spy or something. Yeah, he pops in with a gun and says, like, opens this... I'm doing a French accent now because I'm just imagining that he's somehow involved with the plot. This is a stick-up. Open the safe. And there's like, we have to send a message. And he's like, no, open the safe. If you send a message, you'll just call the cops.
And he's pointing the gun at him, at the men. And Sam Harding's like, wow, he's got effeminate hands. So I had one shotgun pointed at me and one handgun brandished at me.
Yeah.
As an adult. I'm not counting kid stuff. I didn't even notice the hands. The hands don't register at all. It's like, oh, that's what you're thinking. You're not even... Words don't even enter your head. You're like, oh, is as deep as the thought that occurs. Both of those occasions were when I was doing the census. It was a great job.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense now. My son worked for the census up here for 1 year, and there were no guns involved, but there were a lot of interesting people involved.
There was a lot of interesting people. The guy who actually pointed the gun at me got into a lot of trouble. I do not envy him.
Yeah.
He got into a world of trouble. The other guy, I didn't even turn in because it was so polite. And it happened second. He just opened the door and he showed me his gun.
Want to see my gun?
Like, he didn't point it at me or anything. He was like, you see? And he did this like you get me? Kind of like head nod. And I was like, I do, sir. Thank you. You are a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you. And I was gone.
Have you ever seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. Well, one of the early scenes, we have our three main characters trying to hole up at one of their cousins' houses. And as they're walking up to the farmhouse, this kid walks out with a gun and like shoots at their feet.
You men from the bank? Daddy taught me I'm to shoot who's ever from the bank.
Well, we ain't from the bank, young feller.
I nicked the census, man.
Now there's a good boy.
Bobby! My God! It's a known pastime?
And I just love how happily he says, I nicked the census, man.
God, I feel that in my bones.
There's a good boy. It's a great movie. You have to watch that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. I've seen it about 100 times.
Well, we just saw Fast and the Furious 10.
Oh, Lord.
I'm guaranteeing that movie's better than Fast and the Furious anything. Oh. That is a symptom of something in society, that franchise.
What if Marvel was dumber?
Anyway, the mobster's at the train station, and he's knocking the place over. I'm reading not mobster simply because two-tone shoes, and he's of short stature, like a jockey.
Yeah, sure.
And also I'm reading Italian. Maybe that's just me, but that's fine. But he gets into the safe, and he gets $18.
Huzzah!
After wounding both of the men who worked at the train station, and then Dawn comes, and Sam Harding and the other guy whose name was Hiram Meacham. I love a Hiram. They dawn to see the bridge is indeed out. The train is not to be seen. Oh my God, all those people died for $16. And the culprit, the instigator, is in the wind. He gets away.
Yep. The train is just gone. I have one aside about that chapter. This was mentioned in the Night Probe wiki article, and how that accident was based on a real train accident where a train was washed away when a rail bridge washed out. Except that 100 years after this accident, they found out that the Kansas Railway had hauled that train out of the water and gotten it clean to put it back into service again, while insisting that it was gone and they'd never recovered the train or the bodies.
They pulled an insurance scam?
Yep.
Let's tow the car but then resell it?
Woohoo!
I don't know.
But also, all the bodies were gone because I guess they left those cars down there. They wrote it off and committed insurance fraud.
Great capitalism.
But now we're finally in part 1, Rube's Garrote. February 1989, which means it's 1 month after the end of Vixen 03.
Yes.
So there's still holes in Washington, D.C.
Oh my God, I didn't even consider that. Yes, Washington, D.C. was cratered.
But the Iowa's still there. We got shit to do. Next book.
And we open on Alan, the National Security Advisor. Alan Mercier?
Alan Mercier.
He's a rumpled guy. Oddly handsome, but rumpled.
He's plump and bald, but with a shrewd analytical mind.
And he used to work for the World Crisis Projection Commission, which doesn't exist.
That's right, damn it! Don't mess with us! We're wicked fictitious!
But seems like a good thing to exist. Let's think about the crises that are happening and all come together on it. Nah.
He's the National Security Advisor for the new president, so I guess the Vixen 03 president is all gone. And now we have the new president, and I don't think the president gets a name from here on out. It's just the president.
Oh, you're right. He does not. So in February, he would have been inaugurated in January 20th. So he's just a few weeks on the job.
But there's a real long stretch about how he gets his work for the day because he's in a car or a limo being chauffeured into Washington, D.C.
Oh, this is so ooh la la.
And he pulls out his laptop computer and has a satellite uplink that sends him all of his work from the White House before he gets to the White House. Futuristic.
It is so futuristic. I had a coworker in the year 2000. He was renting out closets and stuff, and he gave me his first laptop. I was like, a laptop? He was like, just you wait. You can have this totally free. Because he had a devilish sense of humor. This thing was the size of a table. Not like a folding table, like a table you can't move at your aunt's house. This was enormous. And it came in a briefcase with not like a businessman would use to go to work, but you would use to travel to Europe kind of briefcase. And it kind of just sprung out. It was 50 pounds conservatively.
I've seen those in old magazines and stuff, yeah. Like $15,000.
It was a relic.
For a portable computer. Amazing.
And I remember seeing the movie Sabrina with Humphrey Bogart as a kid. And he's got a car phone in that movie. But at the time, I was like, a car phone in the 50s? So this amount of sophistication, a computer, he's downloading work wirelessly, and it's coded, and it goes right into his encrypted computer. This is the height of technology. It's unimaginable. It's good for Clive. This was a real good look into the future for him. We weren't quite there in 1989, but he came close.
I don't know, 1989, we had enormous cell phones back then.
Yes, they were the size of VCRs.
Yeah.
Which was another device. Look it up. Google it. We don't have time to discuss what that is right now.
Kids these days.
There was a show called Booker that took place after 21 Jump Street, which was peak little girl programming because it was Johnny Depp was in one show, and then Dennis something was in the second show, and he was a teen dream type actor.
Named Dennis?
And he would always look good standing with a leather jacket next to his motorcycle, and he'd pull out his cell phone that was 14 by 10 and then put it back. And I just thought, as a child watching that, I'm doing pockets wrong, because if I shove something like that in a pocket, I'm not going to look cool. It's going to look like I'm smuggling stolen goods.
You're going to be off balanced. You're going to, fall over or walk in circles.
And so Booker is so cool. He could just put this giant thing in his pocket, and his outfit still looks cool. I did not get the magic of movies.
That's the Hollywood magic. Anyway, Alan Mercier gets to work, and he calls Dr. Klein at the Department of Energy. And I think Dr. Klein is who we met at the end of Vixen 03, the guy with the laser.
Oh, he does we circle back to a lot of people in this book.
We're doing some recycling. But yeah, he phones him and makes an appointment. This is one of those weird chapters where it has like a whole bunch of different points of view. Because then we switch to the president, who is worn and tired, and small and solemn, and boring and steady, and he won on a fluke.
What would it be like to have a president that wasn't supposed to win, but won anyway, and is miserable about it? Wonder what that's like.
Wacky.
But that'll work out.
That would never happen.
So he's the dog that caught the car. He wasn't supposed to win, but they dug up evidence of scandal on the other guy, and here he is, 6 weeks into the presidency, and he's aged 10 years.
Yeah, and he has a meeting with Mercier, who tells him that we're boned for energy. The Middle East is going to run out of oil in 2 years.
Yes, and they bring up...
Which totally happened.
Yes. Clive was great. He didn't get everything right. Nobody's perfect.
He got the oil crisis down, but sort of not the reason behind it.
Yes. I like this reason, the FQS, the Free Quebec Society.
Yes.
As a terrorist group, because it sounds delightful. I don't care what president you are. This would have been George H. Bush, 1989. We would have just gotten rid of Reagan, everybody's dad or grandpa, depending on how old you are.
Oh yeah, back then we had the FLQ, that's right. It was the Front de Libération du Québec.
I don't even think Reagan knew where Canada was.
No, in real life, no one knew where Canada was, but in this book, the United States, or at least the Eastern Seaboard, is entirely dependent on Quebec for energy. And the James Bay Project, with 18 dams, 12 powerhouses, 2 rivers the size of the Colorado, $26 billion in American subsidies. All of America's nuclear reactors suck. So America has to get all their power from Quebec, or they're going to slip into a third world country.
Yes, and what Clive couldn't anticipate was a former head of the CIA being president. So H. Bush would have looked at this problem and been rather merciless. He just would have been like, Quebec's ours now.
Yep.
He wasn't shy about invading Iraq. So he would have invaded Quebec for stuff.
Here's a little something we learned in CIA.
I do like how the audiobook guy also says a lot of French words, because up here in Canada, we would talk about things pertaining to Quebec as Québécois, but he pronounces that Québécois. He does them both as S sounds, whereas one's a C and one is silent. Québécois.
It also sounds like a soup.
Yeah.
A seafood soup, prof.
That's Vichyssoise.
Oh.
Also, I love that the separatists in Quebec are Moscow-kissing commies.
Oh, yes. Russia touching. I wrote Russia touching. Russia touching right there.
Russia touching Moscow-kissing commies. We could have another Cuba. Canada has never had this power over the United States. Even when we burned your White House down, we've never had this power over the United States.
It's just because America, the U.S., is like the aliens in the movie, Will Smith, Big Aliens.
Independence Day?
That's the one. Thank you very much. Very national treasure. Independence Day, the aliens come and they just suck everything dry and they take what they want. That's what we are in the U.S. There's no soul here. We would have just taken it.
That's an amazing movie. America fights off the imperialists and the colonialists and those extracting natural resources. Shouldn't they have been friends?
Oh, with the aliens?
I mean, they had their debate in the marketplace of ideas. Yeah.
Yes, I like that. Debate in the marketplace of ideas. Let's settle this with a speech. Let's talk about this. Reason could be found, right? The middle ground. It's where you get run over. Right, and the president's worried about this FQS issue because it's going to impede his new, he's rolling out this new money standard. He wants that to be as painless as possible, which is a hilarious sentence because anytime we change a currency standard, there's blood in the streets.
Yes.
India went to like a different type of paper currency 5 years ago. Just mass casual. It was mayhem.
Yeah, he says he's about to deflate our currency.
And if you give people too much time, there's people gaming the system. There's no way to switch painlessly.
But there is in this book, because it's, fiction. And
Yes.
Mercier says there's two options. Either we pray for a miracle or we go to war, which is, very American. For our listeners right now, America is currently absolutely not at war with Yemen.
Oh,
And you're a damn filthy leftist if you insinuate anything otherwise.
I'm a filthy leftist. And we go to a new perspective, and I didn't catch the guy's name, but I think it's Mercier is telling another guy, your predecessor made off with some $680 million. You better find out where that went.
Yeah, Mercier is having his meeting with Klein, the Secretary of Energy, who is 6'5" with a condor nose.
And Clive was like, I'll do the women find it sexy. Like, Clive.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a dominant nose. Have you met a woman, Clive?
He has a request for an explanation for $680 million for the development of a doodlebug from your predecessor. And it turns out that that is a device to detect minerals. And there's no word where this money went. And I like the line, it's amazing that anybody could lose $680 million. A report came out a couple of years ago that the Pentagon has misplaced $3 trillion, which is 4,400 times more than $680 million.
There was a day in the middle Iraq War, George Bush Jr. was president, where they lost $1 billion, like in a briefcase. There's like, we put the briefcase there. Don't know what happened. It's just gone. Somebody stole it. Like it was a petty crime. Like, sir, what? This questions.
Whoopsie doodle. That's the cost of doing business.
I just want to know how to get into that business. And I think it's doing bad stuff.
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, we learned about doodlebugs, which is just what they call offbeat projects for tools to detect underground minerals. That seems like a very specific term. So let's go with it. And maybe this will come up again. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's Chekhov's doodlebug. We shall see.
I know that is a military term for things that are of like limited use, but like one very specific thing. And I only know that because there was a game I used to play way back in the day called Armada 2525, which was a video game that you installed on discs. Like you actually got...
How many?
Like save icons. I don't know, like 3 or 4. It wasn't a very big game. But one of the ships that you could build in it was a doodlebug, which had the highest attack and the lowest defense in the game. So all it was for was firing off like 1 or 2 shots and getting blown up.
Well.
And it was adorable. And it was called the doodlebug, and I loved it.
Well, it's cutely named. Branding is everything.
So that was always our term for awesome, stupid things.
Oh, that's a hit. That's handy.
Yep.
In chapter 5, we meet Charles Savot. I don't have any printed materials of this book, so I don't know how to spell this guy's name. I've got Savoo, Savot.
That one is Sarvo, which is Sarveaux, and the Eaux is pronounced O.
Yes, like Bordeaux.
Because Francais, yes, like Bordeaux.
And Charlie here is the Prime Minister visiting a power plant.
He is I had to write down a lot of stuff for him. He's a handsome man to men as well as women, with mesmeric eyes. His trim body was a tailor's dream. And it's just like he's just making like a sexy version of our last Trudeau, or he was predicting our current Trudeau, which is like the handsome, hunky, kind of stupid guy.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. If you look good in a suit, and you're not like a burn victim, like you have 2 eyes, a nose, things where it should be. Leadership. You're leadership material if you look good in a suit.
Yep.
And if you're tall on top of it, forget it. President, Prime Minister, here you go.
But yeah, he's inspecting the James Bay Hydro Project, which is, that one thing that will save America.
Well, he's looking and he's like trying to talk to the workers. He's like, this power plant's vital. Are you sure it's secure? What if it shuts down? Act of God, lightning strike, earthquake.
Yeah.
And each worker at the plant's like, no, we can't even...
Do I have tea? What is... Oh.
You lost it.
I was wondering what that noise was. My wife just made me a latte.
Oh, that's very nice.
I guess she knows I'm done my coffee beer.
Only one? You could do better. I am almost a year sober. I went to the liquor store to get Kahlua because I was making tiramisu. And the guy at the liquor store started crying. He was like, I thought you died.
Oh, jeez.
That was too much liquor.
Yeah, if the guy at the liquor store starts crying because you came back, then did you affect his bottom line, or?
Yes, I did.
Oh, dear.
He did say I messed with his inventory.
Oh, I'll stop showing my beer cans on stream then. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It makes you feel awkward every time I bring it up, and that's delightful to me. It's gold. It's chef's kiss. I love that. I do it to everybody. My mother-in-law's like, you want some wine? I'm like, no, I can't. She's like, every time she gasps because she forgot. It's fantastic.
Anyway, we're only in chapter 5 still, and we're coming up on the hour mark, so I don't know how long this episode's going to be.
The power plant guys say you can't even shut this place down unless you have like 10 people. 3 people, 5 people, not enough to shut it down. Everybody has to have a secret procedure to shut down the plant, and we don't know what the other guy's procedure is. So we need all of these people to shut down the plant. And I'm thinking, what is the work atmosphere like? There's no sick days then.
Yeah.
You need everybody all the time? There's no redundancy? That's not safe.
They have to have like a shitload of backups, I guess.
But it is a government in a first world nation, so there doesn't have to be backups.
Good point.
You could just assume there are backups.
I don't know. Remember, we are commies.
I forget that. Yeah. So the Charles Sabu is in this power plant. He's blown away. He does it's like a ribbon cutting. He's there to press the flesh, take some pictures, and hype up the guys at the power plant, regardless of their labor situation, which might be problematic. And then we get to this guy Glee, who's lying in wait somewhere. I heard him, his name could have been Glue, or Glee, or McPhee.
I believe it's Foss Gly, because it's Foss space GLY in the wiki, in the list of characters. Is it Glee? I could have sworn it was Gly, and I'm on the audiobook.
The audiobook is Glee.
Oh, Foss Glee then.
It added a bit of whimsy that I kind of liked. But he's a would-be assassin.
We transfer to him. He's planned his assassination of Sarvo perfectly, with perfectly efficient cross-country skiers who have tiny ground-to-air missiles. And they spend a lot of time describing how broken his nose is.
Was his nose also oddly sexy? Was this just a bed that Clive was on?
Clive Cussler, I'm not sure if the nose was sexy, but I think Clive Cussler only recognizes people by eyes, nose, and fatness level.
I can't blame the guy. I recognize people by hair and walk. You change your hair, you're dead to me.
But since this whole part takes place basically at an airport with a bunch of terrorists, and one of them has a fucked up broken nose, all I can imagine right now is the entire cast of Die Hard 2.
Die Hard 2?
Yeah.
Timely reference.
Die Hard in an airport.
Die Hard, oh my God, Die Hard in an airport. That is a terrible movie. I love that. I give the Die Hard so much slack, but that one is really, oof. Die
Hard 1 and 3 are nearly perfect. 2 and 4 are pretty bad. And 5 never happened. I don't care what you say.
You feel the same way about the last Indiana Jones movies? The last 2 never happened.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, only 1 and 2. Whatever else came after, didn't happen.
Yes, exactly. Well, I don't know. Ghostbusters answered the call. I thought, like, it wasn't a great movie, but it was pretty damn funny.
It's okay. I just have so much emotion wrapped up into Ghostbusters.
Yeah, same here. 1 and 2, I felt like a lot of people don't even like Ghostbusters 2. I love Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, when I was a kid, the music got me. I just like the song. And then it's rather cleverly written.
I am at drippings with goo.
You had a violent, prolonged, transformative psychic episode.
Sorry we had to hose you there, but...
It is. They did a good job. Anyway, rather than talking about better movies, let's back to this book.
Yes, back to this plot. Night Probe, Chapter 6. We've got Sarvo. Oh, no.
Oh.
I missed the plane crash.
I was going to say,
we're
still halfway through Chapter 5, and I have one more point about Foss Gly, or Foss Glee, to bring up, which is that he's an American, he's an assassin for hire, and his parents are a professional wrestler and a sheriff's teenage daughter. Why does that need to be in here?
That does not need to be in here, but that's a lot of background. We're fleshing out this character. We're learning his motivations, his reason for being, and you kind of get like professional wrestling before the McMahon era, the Vince McMahon era. That was a real gnarly gig. Those were tough guys. So,
Yep.
And a sheriff's daughter. Oh, this was a violent situation to grow up in.
Yeah. Anyway, he screws up because of weather, and one of the missiles misses. So the airplane has just enough time to circle around before crashing back at the airport.
Yes, Foskey is successful in having his assassins get off. He had like, what, a 5-man team of cross-country skiers?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. They wanted to hit the plane twice. They only hit it once with a missile. So the heroic pilots, Emmett and May, I believe, try and land the plane. They both die in the process. There's lots of people on the plane. There's the press corps. There's administrative staff. There's secretaries. Presumably sexy secretaries.
The body tally at the end is 42 men and 3 women die, but the Mounties that are Sarvo's bodyguards, with all the shit happening, the engine's on fire, there's a hole in the side of the airplane, everyone's screaming. The Mounties wrap a blanket around Sarvo's head and basically kick him off the airplane, and he falls to the runway and like hits and rolls and breaks everything, but he's still alive, and everybody else dies.
And his head was protected. This reminded me of one of the Koch brothers was in the Tenerife disaster. That was a big airplane crash in the 80s. He was the sole survivor.
Ugh.
It's just like, he was like, I just saw an opening and I left. I'm like, can't you be like, dudettes over here? Like, shout as you go? Nothing? Okay.
I'm leaving.
Maybe point something. I'm not saying don't go. I'm just saying make a ruckus as you leave. If you're going towards the only visible exit. This is true in plane crashes and nightclub fires. Be like, hey, nightclub's on fire. As you're leaving, say that and leave swiftly.
Yeah, don't be like, leave and then lock the door behind you.
Like, that didn't even cross my mind, you psychopath. But now we've had the airplane crash, the shipwreck, and the train wreck.
We've got all 3.
5 chapters in. This is action-packed. So, Charlie Savo is saved. He's in the hospital. His wife goes to meet him, and she's like a Jackie O type, dark-haired, in charge. Women love to hate her.
Yeah.
Men are intimidated. She reduces everyone to puddles of goo.
World leaders were regressed to timid schoolboys was the sentence I wrote down.
Wonder, like, I've never been a world leader. I imagine there's a lot of daily carnage in that job. If Brad Pitt swung by my office in between when I was deciding who gets famine aid or where I have to bomb, am I going to be impressed with, ooh, he's so handsome?
No, but I think Clive would be.
He's better at work-life balance then.
Yeah.
I envy that.
But yeah, this whole chapter just seems to be here to have her pose for photos and have Charlie say, there's great peril for Canada if the wrong people discover, and then he passes out.
Yes, and she runs away.
And it's something to do with the hydro dam.
When she is playing her role, acting the part, she knows she's not tenderly involved with her husband. It was a political marriage, so she's there for the cameras and to look...
I was going to say, Chapter 7 gets into that, yeah.
To look sincere, oh yes it does. But she looks sincere and she looks gorgeous. Very fashionable at all times. And the public loves her. She portrays the image of the devoted wife, the tearful, almost widow. She's great, according to the public eye. And then we find out at the end of that chapter that his doctor is like talking to somebody else. A named character who we also get a background on who is not important whatsoever. So we'll skip that. Doc's like, I can't believe this guy, Charlie Savo, the Prime Minister, said, after the surgery, give me some stimulants. And I can't believe I did it. It's a crazy ask and a crazy thing I did it. Yeah, it's crazy. His heart would explode. He just came out of general anesthesia. That's not the time to do your crystal meth.
Especially since he didn't get to, share this information that he had. He passed out halfway through relaying this important secret.
No, that's not what he was doing. He was performing for his wife.
Oh.
That's what I got. I am not further ahead than you.
I didn't catch that at all.
I got that he was lying in wait. He was doing the diabolical.
I didn't get that at all. I got that as he was being sincere and genuine, and everybody else around him is being horrible, backstabby, two-faced people.
Yes, I think he was faking being delirious. And all the things about him talking about his mother and the car accident that killed her made him seem more out of it than he was.
Oh, we'll find out later, I guess.
We will. Time will tell. Let's race along to Chapter 7. Totally still with us. Listeners, you are crazy people, and I love you.
We might have to end at the end of Chapter 7, because we're already over an hour, and Chapter 8 is where everything completely changes gears and slows down again. But Chapter 7 is a great one to end on. because Danielle is at home with her lover.
A very hairless lover. Meticulously hairless, like a weaponized Telly Savalas.
And they only give you his name at the very end of this chapter. Like, they talk about him 100 times, but they only give you his name at the end, so I'll only give you the name at the end.
Yes, but there are lines and lines dedicated to how there's not a speck of hair on this guy. Not in his arms, not in his legs, not in his groin, not in his head. He is hairless. He is a seal.
Huge swollen muscles. His body is formidable. He is completely shaved. I have written down that he better be this book's giant henchman as well. And I had to write down a whole bunch of other lines along with, oh God, after all of them, because she inhales his musky body oil. She could feel the bestial power oozing from his pores, and the heat between her legs flared and she went limp. Like, this is the weirdest chapter.
Some of us are eating.
After multiple assassinations so far.
Well, love happens when love happens, but it's just a meticulously groomed, hairless man, not bald. It's not like it's just his head is bald. He's a bodybuilder hairless, so he could see himself glisten with the musk oil.
Yeah.
Talking to this person would be a nightmare. He would talk to you about his lats.
Sorry I'm late, Lisa. I was at the gym totally gunning my lats. Just gunning them!
I'm trying to think back to a high school boyfriend who kept telling me about his workout routine. Like, the lats came up a lot. Squats, just so boring.
Look, lats are important. But he is a bodybuilder, because after they argue, he's flexing in the mirror, and Clive is like listing off the poses he's flexing in the mirror.
Yes, he's doing bodybuilder poses while he's oiled and then looking at himself in the mirror, which just screams of a great personality.
Mm-hmm.
Go to a dinner party with this guy. He's going to be fascinating. No. Nobody who does wrestling poses or beauty poses in the mirror at length in front of somebody else. You're by yourself. His girlfriend, the first lady, the most gorgeous lady in Canada, we've been led to believe. Mm-hmm. And he's acting like a 15-year-old after doing weight training for 1 week.
And he's doing this basically while she's yelling at him, because, like, it's morning, they wake up, and she's immediately mad. The job was botched. My husband's alive. Only when Charles is dead can we be an independent socialist nation.
So she's a freedom fighter. She's doing all of this, the political marriage, the posing for the camera. She's doing it all for a cause. Quebec separatism, which I understand was a serious topic at the time. Every once in a while we get like Oregon wants to secede. Texas, every few years, Texas is like, we're out of here. And just the modern bureaucratic entanglements, it's laughable. Like,
That's one thing that was happening a lot. I remember, like, even as a kid growing up, and it's been happening from the 60s all the way to the 2000s, was the large number of people in Quebec who actually want to separate. But it never quite gets up to enough to do it.
It's completely unreasonable. And we leave so many people. Every time Texas brings it up, they're like, well, we'll keep the Social Security, but we want to secede. Like, no, this isn't Catholicism. You don't get to pick and choose.
It would be a lot easier for Quebec, it would be a lot easier for Texas, because if Quebec separates, we still have 4 provinces on the other side of Quebec. We still have Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI that are now completely cut off.
That would be a wacky map.
Yep. But we finally get this guy's name. His name is Henri Villon. Or, if you pronounce it in English, Henry Villain.
I love an Henri.
Subtle.
Henry's a great name. I love a Henry. Hank is great. Henri, ooh, that's exotic and sounds like he owns a beret.
Henri Villon.
Dominic, bad guy?
It's pronounced bad G. It's French. It means good man.
And he's a member of the Liberal Party, but he's actually the secret head of the FQS, of the Free Quebec Society.
So there's more than meets the eye. Even though I pegged him as just a goon, a muscle-bound goon, with nothing to talk about, he does have interests and hobbies.
And we get one final bit of information here. So when Sarveau was awake and talking to his wife, he said to increase all the security at the James Bay control booth and to consult Max Rube. And we didn't know who Max Rube was, or Max Roubaix, perhaps. Actually, I guess it would be Roubaix, because this part is called Roubaix's Garrote.
Yes.
And as Henri Villon puts on a wig and says, that doesn't make any sense. Max Roubaix was a mass murderer who died 100 years ago.
Yes, it would be like the president saying, go ask Ma Barker.
Yeah.
It's just a historical reference that makes no sense. Listeners, Chapter 8 is huge.
Yep.
We circle back to somebody you were not expecting, but it's like no broad goes unturned.
Yep.
So we're going to circle back to misogyny. It's going to be great.
Dun, dun, dun. Cliffhanger. Boy, howdy, do we circle back to misogyny. But that's a good cutoff. I guess we can end it here. We have plots upon plots upon plots. The leader of Canada has been nearly assassinated.
And he's broken and bloody.
And we still have no Dirk Pitt.
Dirk Pitt's imminent. Don't worry. He's coming.
Oh, yes. Boy, howdy, is Dirk Pitt coming.
I was not good. You did that. You did that. I hope you're proud of yourself.
I am.
Thank you. I almost had to.
Do not come. Do not come.
I have to go out on a high note.
Okay. Goodbye, listeners. Now we're going to glance ahead for a second to Chapter 8, so don't listen. I'm going to go blow my nose like it's my job now.
Awesome. All right. And stop.
This has been Cussler Hustlers. Your hosts have been Topper and Nancy. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Cussler Hustlers.